The Way Home fans keep asking the same question. What if Season 5 was already written before it got canceled? Turns out it was. Writers had a plan. They had scripts. They had a twist that would have changed the whole show. And it all came down to one small detail. One tiny change in the story that would have flipped everything fans thought they knew about the pond. Stay with me, because this one detail is wild. Asterisk, most fans think The Way Home just ended because the network wanted to stop the show. That's only half the story. Behind the scenes, the writers had already built a plan for Season 5. This wasn't just an idea they talked about in a meeting. They had actual scripts. Around 6 episodes worth of story was already written before Hallmark pulled the plug. That means the show didn't just stop with random loose ends. It stopped in the middle of a plan that was already moving forward. So why did it get canceled if the writers were ready to go? The answer comes down to money and risk. The Way Home already had 2 time periods running side by side, the present day and the past. Season 5 planned to add a 3rd time period. That meant more costumes, more sets, more actors, and a much bigger budget. Hallmark looked at the cost and decided it was too much for a show that, while loved by fans, wasn't pulling in massive numbers. Many other family dramas on the network faced the same fate around this time. The network wanted shorter, simpler shows instead of long, layered family sagas. This is important because it changes how fans should look at the ending. The show didn't run out of story. It ran out of budget. The writers knew exactly where they wanted to take the Landry family next. They had a full plan mapped out, but the timing and the cost just didn't line up. Instead of stretching the show past its limit, the team behind The Way Home chose to close it out with Season 4 in a way that still felt complete. But here's where it gets interesting. The team didn't throw away their Season 5 plan. They talked about it openly after the show ended. And buried inside that plan was one small twist. A single change to the story that fans had been waiting years to see. This wasn't a big, loud twist. It was something quiet, something personal. But it was the kind of detail that could have shifted the entire meaning of the show's biggest mystery, the pond itself. Asterisk. The Landry family already jumped from today to the 1970s. Then from the 1970s all the way back to the 1800s. Fans thought that was the biggest jump the show would ever make. They were wrong. Season 5 was set to send the family somewhere nobody expected. Straight into the 1990s. This wasn't just picked at random. The writers had a real reason for choosing this decade. Somewhere in the story, there was a missing piece. A journal entry from the Landry family that nobody could find or explain. This journal had been mentioned earlier in the show, but it was never fully solved. The writers decided the only way to finally answer that mystery was to send the family back to the exact time period when that journal was written. That meant building a brand new world inside the show. Grunge-style clothes, old-school gadgets, dial-up internet sounds in the background. Even a teenage version of Alice, showing her life years before fans ever met her. Think about how big of a change this really is. Every past season kept adding a new time period on top of the last one. First it was the present and the 1970s. Then Season 4 added the 1800s. Season 5 was supposed to follow that same pattern by adding the 1990s as a brand new layer. That means by Season 5, the show would have had 3 full-time periods running together. Present day, one older era, and now the 1990s stacked in between. That is a lot for any show to manage. But the writers were confident it would work because it followed the same pattern that made the show popular from the start. This jump wasn't just about showing a cool decade on screen. It was about finally giving fans real answers. The missing journal had been a quiet mystery sitting in the background for a while. Jumping into the 1990s meant the writers finally had a place and a time to explain who wrote it and why it mattered. It would have connected pieces from earlier seasons that fans probably forgot about, tying old questions to a brand new part of the timeline. This time jump alone would have been a huge moment for the show. But it wasn't the biggest reveal hiding inside Season 5. The real twist goes even deeper. And it's tied directly to one character fans have been rooting for the whole time. Asterisk, every fan of this show has watched Andy stand in her mother's shadow season after season. She has always been close to the story but never fully at the center of it. Season 5 was going to change that. The writers had a plan to finally give Andy her own moment, and it was tied directly to the new 1990s time period. Here is where it gets personal. While in the 1990s, Andy was set to discover a hidden connection inside her own family. This wasn't a small detail thrown in for fun. It was something buried in the past that nobody in the family knew about. Once she found it, it wasn't just going to explain something about her own life. It was going to change how the pond itself worked. Remember, the pond is the reason this entire show exists. It is what lets the Landry family travel through time in the first place. If Andy's discovery changed the rules of the pond, that means the writers were planning to shift the core idea the whole show is built on. Think about what that really means for the story. For 4 seasons, fans have watched the pond work a certain way. It sends people back and forth between time periods, but always within limits the show has slowly explained along the way. If Andy's find in the 1990s rewrote those limits, then every future episode after that point would have played by new rules. That is a massive shift for a show built almost entirely around how time travel works. But the twist wasn't just about lore or rules. It was about Andy as a person. Once she learned the truth, she was going to face a choice that would test her more than anything else in the show. She could return to the present and go back to her normal life, or she could stay behind in the past to help someone she cared about. This wasn't a simple decision with an easy answer. Staying meant giving up everything she knew in the present. Leaving meant walking away from someone she loved in a time she wasn't supposed to belong to. This is the kind of choice that changes a character forever. It's also exactly the kind of moment fans had been hoping to see Andy get for years. Instead of staying in the background while Del and Cott carried the emotional weight of the show, Andy would have finally taken center stage in her own story, and that decision, however small it might have looked on paper, was the one change strong enough to alter everything fans thought they understood about this show. Asterisk, here's the part that makes this whole story hit even harder. The writers weren't forced to stop because they ran out of ideas. They had to stop while the story was still moving forward. 6 episodes of a brand new time period were already written. A major twist for Andy was already planned. The rules of the pond were already set to change. All of that got put on hold, not because the story was finished, but because the show ran out of time before it could be made. The people who created this show have talked about this since it ended. One of the writers said something that stuck with a lot of fans. She said they felt like everything truly important to the story had already been told by the end of season 4. That statement matters a lot when you think about it. Even though season 5 had real plans and real scripts, the team behind the show still felt like the heart of the story reached its ending point. They didn't feel like they were cutting the show off in the middle of something and finished. They felt like the core journey of the Landry family had already reached a real conclusion. Even if extra chapters existed on paper. At the same time, the writers didn't fully close the door on this either. They've said more than once that there is still room for more of this story if the chance ever comes up again. That kind of comment keeps hope alive for fans who want to see this world continue in some form, even if it's not through a traditional new season. So here's what all of this really means. The Way Home didn't end because the writers were out of ideas. It ended because a full season, one built around a new time period and one character's biggest turning point, never made it past the planning stage. The version of season 5 that fans imagine in their heads isn't just a guess. It was close to becoming real, right down to real scripts and a real plan for how the story would move forward. Now here's a question for you. If Hallmark ever decided to bring this story back in some way, even years from now, would you want to see this exact version of season 5? The 1990s time jump, Andy's big choice, and the pond changing forever. Let me know what you think, and if you've made it this far, you clearly love this show as much as I do. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything new about The Way Home.